Guys, Coinbase has officially fired back at the SEC. Now, in their public statements before, they've stated that the SEC has no jurisdiction over secondary markets. Now, they've brought it home. In their official court filings, they finally stated that the SEC has no jurisdiction over their secondary markets, going head on with the SEC now. It's completely challenging the SEC's authority over all secondary markets. And basically, like, if the SEC loses this case, they lose their case over all the exchanges. Now, if Judge Torres rules in Ripple's favor, they are going to pretty much win this case anyways. They're in the same district, and it's kind of like the same reasoning. But if they actually win this, if Coinbase actually wins this lawsuit, then the SEC can't really sue Binance, they can't sue Kraken, they can't sue Gemini, any of those things for listing illegal securities. And they say that the SEC has not given them due process, which is true because as Coinbase has filed, the Coinbase has welcomed SEC's informal and formal guidelines. And the SEC seems to have changed its position from like when Gensler took office in January of 2021 to mid-2022 when they actually sued Coinbase. So the SEC sued Coinbase at the beginning of June, alleging that a dozen cryptocurrencies offered through its wallet or trading platforms that are unregistered securities. In its answer file earlier Thursday, Coinbase claimed that these cryptos are not investment contracts and therefore are not securities. So basically, like, when you buy on the secondary market, you're basically just buying and trading. You're not really signing, you're not really agreeing to any kind of contract. Because the way the SEC has set up the case is that they said like the actual, like crypto sometimes isn't a contract, but the way you sell it is a contract. And that only applies to primary markets, not secondary markets. And the judge in LBRY's case kind of made the SEC admit that these things themselves may not be securities, but the way they're offered on a primary basis are securities. So the SEC is kind of trapped itself. And the thing is, Coinbase has made statements like this on their blog and tweets before, but they go further in detail in explaining this. And of course, they filed it on the official lawsuit. So the SEC is now in the fight of its life for jurisdiction over the entire crypto market. They could lose a huge amount of power if they actually lose this Coinbase case, which would kind of depend on the Ripple's case. And the Coinbase case says, because no such obligations are carried in the transactions over Coinbase's secondary market exchange, and because value that Coinbase purchasers receive these transactions inheres in the things bought and traded for rather than the business that generated them, meaning that the business is not selling them directly through Coinbase, the transactions are not securities transactions. And that's the whole thing. Like the SEC says all these are securities transactions. And they say like, even were the SEC correct that the assets and services it identifies are within the scope of its existing regulatory authority, which has definitely not been determined yet, this action must be dismissed on the independent grounds that it violates Coinbase's due process rights. So basically they're saying regulation by enforcement is wrong, which I definitely agree with. And Coinbase has voluntarily submitted to regulation by multiple overlapping bodies, including the SEC and the SEC staff, obviously with the CFTC as well. So like with these two agencies not determining whether they're securities or commodities, this thing is a complete mess. And with it being a complete mess, it does violate Coinbase's due process. So this could definitely blow the SEC completely apart and really reduce its authority. So like this lawsuit is definitely heating up. And the SEC has chosen to pursue enforcement actions over rulemaking. The SEC doesn't really want to make any clear rules. And Congress, by the way, has not ruled that these things are actually securities. So the SEC doesn't actually have any any legal power over this stuff. In a separate document also filed to the judge overseeing the case, Coinbase alleged that its due process rights were violated when the SEC brought the lawsuit and that the SEC's lawsuit may violate major questions doctrine. And we've talked about that before. And that has to do with like congressional authority. The company asked the judge to let it file for judgment and set a 7-week schedule for its motion, the SEC's opposition, and its own response to the opposition. So basically, the schedule is coming out. This case is moving forward, and could be a gigantic blow to the SEC's power, and it could just blow up the SEC authority over all crypto exchanges, which would actually be a good thing. The other thing I want to mention is that FTT and FTX has exploded by over 35% because John Ray III, they've gone ahead with the revival of the FTX idea. They've given some more details. They said the company has moved ahead with its main plan to reboot, so they are going to reboot. It could actually be a pretty decent opportunity to pick up FTX right now. I probably still wouldn't, but there is a chance it can go back to $10 or $20. Maybe even higher during a bull run, because they're trying to bring it all back. And realistically, for the people that bought FTX and own FTX, this is the only way they're going to get really a lot of their money back. And they've already began the process of soliciting interested parties. I'm not really sure who's going to be interested in bringing back FTX. I'm not really sure if they're really going to use the FTT token. We don't really know, but FTT token has spiked by over 35% on this basis. Not really sure if I would buy it right now, but it's still at a tenth of what it was when FTX crashed. So might be a decent opportunity. I still think it's pretty risky, especially because it just spiked, but they are actually going to reboot FTX. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.